All right, guys, I have to confront something very uncomfortable. I failed. And the worst part is, I didn't realize I was failing. And I think sometimes the hardest failures to admit aren't the ones where somebody catches you doing something obviously wrong. They're the ones where you look back and realize you slowly drifted into something you never intended to. And that's exactly what happened to me. So, first, I owe Dan McClellan a big thank you. Yeah, if you know him, that sentence probably just made some of you spit your coffee across the room. But I mean it. Dan responded to my last video and he eviscerated it. I mean that sincerely. He tore apart some of the specific arguments I made. And when I went back and examined his criticism, I had to admit something I didn't particularly want to admit. On those points, he was right. I was wrong. Now, before anybody gets too excited, let me be very clear about something. That doesn't mean I've changed my mind about the larger subject. It doesn't mean I've abandoned the concerns that led me to make the video in the first place. And it certainly doesn't mean Dan has somehow convinced me that the broader position I was arguing for is false. What it means is much more uncomfortable. Some of the evidence I chose to use to make the case just wasn't good enough. And worse than that, I now recognize that I had an agenda for leaning into those particular points. I wanted them to support the conclusion I was already arguing for. And when you're convinced that your larger conclusion is correct, it's incredibly easy to start treating supporting evidence differently than you treat opposing evidence. You scrutinize the opposing argument. You look for weaknesses. You ask whether the source is reliable. You demand context. But when something seems to support your side, well, that sure looks useful, doesn't it? And that's precisely the kind of intellectual inconsistency I've spent a lot of time on this channel telling people to avoid. So when Dan destroyed those arguments, my first instinct was to get defensive. I wanted to push back. I wanted to get angry. I wanted to talk a little trash. Because nobody likes being told that something they are confidently presenting is wrong. But after I got past that initial reaction, I had to ask myself the question that matters more than my pride. Was he right? And in those particular points, yes, he was. The best I could reference it or research it in a week, yeah, it seems like he was. And I was not. That doesn't change what I believe about the larger issue, but it does change how honestly I need to argue for it. And honestly, that's the part that hit me the hardest. Because I didn't want Silver Gorilla to become a place where I gather ammunition for conclusions I've already decided are true. I want it to be a place where I pursue truth, even when the truth makes my argument harder to defend. And that's where I realized the problem wasn't just that I got some things wrong. The problem was why I was willing to lean on them in the first place. But here's where this gets bigger than a few mistakes in a YouTube video. Because the mistakes expose something in me that I don't want to ignore. But I also don't want to admit. I have developed a bad habit. When I started making these videos, I would do the research myself. I would read the books, I would examine the sources, I would wrestle with the arguments. I would bring that information to AI and say, essentially, here's what I've found. Help me organize this, help me make it flow, help me say it better. And that is a perfectly legitimate use of that tool. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Life got busy, the videos kept coming, and gradually, really kind of imperceptibly, I started allowing AI to do more and more of the actual work. Eventually, I was letting it research things for me and then asking it to verify what it had found. And I need to be very careful with that word, verify. Because verification isn't simply asking a machine whether something is true. And I should have known better. I talk to you all the time about the importance of examining evidence. I tell you not to simply accept a claim because somebody says it confidently. I tell you to ask questions, check sources, follow the evidence. And in this particular area, I stopped doing every bit of that. That's on me. It's not AI's fault. AI did exactly what I told it to do. So I gave it the wrong job, is what happened. And when it gave me information that sounded plausible, I trusted it more than I should have. That is my failure. And if you've watched this channel because you trusted me to handle these subjects carefully, then I owe you an apology. And I am sorry. Not because I got a few things wrong. Human beings get things wrong. I'm sorry because I allowed myself to become complacent about something I have repeatedly told you not to be complacent about. That's different. And I don't want to hide behind the fact that my intentions were good. I wasn't trying to deceive anybody. I wasn't trying to manufacture evidence for Christianity. I wasn't intentionally putting false information into your hands. But good intentions don't make bad methodology good or acceptable. If I'm going to stand here and tell skeptics, don't just believe me, check it, then I have to be willing to live under that same standard myself. Otherwise, I'm not asking you to pursue truth. I'm asking you to trust me, bro. And those are two very different things. That's why I've had to revisit what I call the silverback standard. See, the silverback standard isn't, can I make a convincing argument? It's not, can I beat the skeptic? It's not even, can I find enough information to prove my point? The standard is, am I pursuing what is true even when truth makes my argument weaker or harder to defend? Because if Christianity is true, I don't need to cheat in order to defend it. I don't need to massage the evidence. I don't need to hide inconvenient facts. And I certainly don't need to pretend I'm incapable of being wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if someone shows me that I am wrong, then I have a choice. I can protect my pride, or I can pursue the truth. And I want this channel to be about the second one. So I have changed the way I'm using AI for Silver Gorilla, and I may have to put it away altogether. But I have put boundaries in place specifically to keep myself from falling back into this. AI can help me organize what I've researched. It can help me smooth out the rough edges. It can help me take the information I've already gathered and turn it into something coherent and engaging. If you've been watching me for very long, you have seen that change. But it is not going to be my substitute for research. It is not going to be my source of evidence. And it is not going to be the thing that I outsource my thinking to. I'm going back to the process. Read the sources, examine the evidence, check the claims, compare the arguments, find the strongest objections. And then, and only then, bring that material here and let the tool help me communicate what I've actually learned. And honestly, that's probably going to make some videos take longer. There may be some gaps in the near future. I may miss a week here and there. Good. Maybe they should take longer. Because if I'm asking you to take truth seriously, then I have to take truth seriously enough to do the work. So Dan, thank you. I still may disagree with you on plenty of things, and I am sure we'll disagree again. That's okay. It's part of the process. But where you showed me that I was wrong, you did something even more valuable. You gave me an opportunity to practice what I preach. And to everyone watching, I am sorry for the times I have given you information that I hadn't adequately vetted myself. I'm sorry for becoming complacent, and I'm sorry if I gave you a reason to trust a conclusion that I hadn't done the work to properly establish. You deserve better than that, and I'm going to do better than that. Not because I suddenly think I'm incapable of making mistakes. Well, clearly the opposite. I know I'm capable of making mistakes. That's exactly why I need a standard higher than my own confidence. Because here's the thing. God can draw a straight line with a crooked stick. I am the crooked stick. I'm not the authority. I'm not the final word. I'm a guy trying to follow the evidence, understand scripture, and ask hard questions and point people toward Christ. Sometimes I'm going to get that right. Sometimes I'm going to get it wrong. But if I'm going to ask you to take truth seriously, then I have to take my own words seriously too. So this isn't just an apology, it's a correction. And from here forward, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to question my assumptions. I'm going to examine the evidence. I'm going to listen when somebody challenges me. And when the evidence tells me I've got something wrong, I'm going to confront that. I'm going to say so. Because the goal was never to build a platform where Silver Gorilla is always right. The goal is to pursue what is true, even when it costs me something, even when it bruises my pride, like now. Even when the truth requires me to look into a camera and say, I was wrong. That's the standard. And this time, I'm taking my own words seriously.